So what happens if a client doesn't plan? What are your experiences on no plan whatsoever?
I suppose if they're lucky, the consequences are small, but it will clearly depend on the context and circumstances in which they find themselves. I think I spoke earlier about cash flow lifetime modelling and how that can help provide reassurance to a business owner about entering that next stage of their life. And without that foresight or forward planning, there are going to be unanswered questions for them, such as were there any personal allowances they could have utilised prior to sale? How can they provide for their family in the future? And what are the investment options available to them? And what impact does that have on them as an individual? And these are the sort of questions that we can help clients grapple with and provide answers to.
But then conversely, if, and clearly things overtake them and they suddenly find themselves in the last week, 10 days of a transaction, what does that look like from your perspective and your team's perspective of trying to give a level of advice or lead?
I think it's about really being as reactive as possible and trying to support the client in as timely fashion. I think recognise that this period is fraught with uncertainty, and being on hand to be able to advise in whatever scenario there is to provide the best advice for them is what we can do as advisors.
Great. And then for Douglas, from your perspective, because you'll be in the trenches at this point in time anyway.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of angles really here. One is very practical. I'll give you a real life example. A fairly common scenario, business owner has been approached by a potential acquirer, keen to do a deal quickly, and what they had not done, which they had said they were going to do sometime previously, was to put in place a share option scheme for senior managers. The net result of that was that they had to significantly increase the size of the options to compensate for the tax position that those employees were going to be left in. Whereas if they'd done that sort of 2-3 years previously, as they'd made the promise to do, then there wouldn't have been the same tax impact. So, practical example of where not planning ahead can have a significant financial disadvantage. There's another angle as well, which is sort of an emotional one, and this is really about where there are multiple shareholders, and those shareholders all understanding between themselves what an outcome needs to look like for it to be viable for all of them, and to not have those conversations early, and for those individuals to not have taken advice from people like Jonathan around wealth management and what the outcome can look like for them, means that you can get a disjoint in what people's expectations, aspirations and requirements are from a transaction, and that can blow the whole thing apart very quickly.
Great. And Malin, from your perspective?
Well, I think put simply, it often leads back to you end up paying more tax. If you've not utilised all your personal allowances that we've talked about, or you've not put in place your share option scheme for your employees, normally it's only the tax man that wins. But kind of coupled with that, it is a really intense period of time in somebody's life. So it will just be more intense, and it will be more longer hours talking to your advisors. And yes, you trust them and you like them and we all get on, but there are probably things you want to be doing at 10, 11 o'clock at night that's not sitting on the phone to your lawyer. So plan early and plan ahead to try to limit that disruption.